Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Shake Pods. So today we have with us Fu. So Fu and we recently met at an event where he was a speaker and he was talking about his product that he has built called London Startup Map and how and what's the use case of the startup, how he has built it, and what are the challenges that he has gone through while building this product, and how this will be useful for people, for especially for people like Fu and me who regularly go to events, which is Fu has been a product manager with Amazon and now with Maersk. Our community has a lot to learn from Fu in terms of product design, in terms of uh, how to build products or how not to build products, and what use case or what idea is worth building as a product. So we learn from Fu. Welcome, Fu. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Soil. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I think you genuinely have a bit of non-linear path, right? So you have done advertising, journalism and advertising in Bangalore, and you have done your masters in London in marketing, and you have worked in marketing roles and PM roles. So tell me one thing that a traditional person from engineering background who has turned into product manager will not have gained experience, or what is the edge that you have over this traditional background PMs?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say edge or any of those sorts. I would just say, like, within each of, in terms of whatever I learned in my degree or my previous avatar in marketing, it helps as a PM to apply those, whatever I learned, into what I do. For example, journalism taught me a lot about writing, more specifically, how to write for the audience that you're writing to. I never knew it then, but it came in very handy when I started working at Amazon, because Amazon is a very doc heavy and writing culture, which for me, it's great because as a PM, it lets you clarify your thinking before ever, writing a line of code. So with Amazon, there's a lot of, writing memos to discuss. And before you launch any product, you have, it's famous for their 6-page PR FAQs. So my journalism, I would say, degree and what I learned in that came in handy. And as part of my bachelor's, I not only did journalism, so it was sort of a mixed degree wherein it's journalism, psychology, and mass media advertising. And with that, psychology also helped a lot. For me as a PM, it taught me how folks behave, how do they actually, and why they behave the way they do. So instead of changing learned behaviors, how do you optimize your product towards that behavior? So that's what I did with, with my products, and, put my learnings in psychology to that. And marketing, again, learned a lot about GTM, go-to marketing. So I think what happens generally with products is it starts and ends, rather it just ends with the product being launched. But I think what makes a product successful is the adoption. So how do you get people to adopt your, product? What is your go-to marketing plan, and how do you sort of work backwards from that? How do you position your product in terms of your narrative? Because most people, there's already a cognitive overload with a lot of people. So how do you position your product in a way that it's easy to understand and get your value prop of your product out in a way that, folks will really get it and look at it and be like, yes, this actually solves my problem.
All right. Many people have been using AI to write nowadays. Do you think people who are studying writing in their bachelor's, or writers itself, do you think writers will get replaced? Is AI there yet?
I don't know. It's hard to answer whether it'll replace writers or not in this day and age. Will writing become redundant? I don't think so. Because I think it's just an evolution of the tools. There's still a lot of, human judgment and context that needs to go into that. Otherwise, if you just let AI write everything, everything will sound the same. Because when a human writes it, you can kind of see the personality of the person and their own, views come out in that writing. And I think, like I said earlier, it seems like more of an evolution of sorts. The example I can think of is, initially when we started writing by ink and pen and paper, right? That evolved to a typewriter, and then you needed a typist to type that. That evolved to, Word and computers. So the writing never went away. It's just that how you write evolved over time. So I think at least I feel that would still be the case with writing in AI.
Right, right. I think what I've observed is, especially in social media or wherever you are posting or using AI to write scripts or post actually what the AI has given and posting it on LinkedIn or X, I think those pieces will get suppressed if you have solely copy pasted the AI, whatever AI has written. But then you can use AI as bouncing board and to navigate or to explore different writing styles and different kind of framings of what you have originally thought of. I think AI can help in that, but then I don't think it is as good as a good writer who knows how the audience will react or how to actually write good or make it perform well in social media. I don't think AI is there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said earlier, even if AI does get there, and if you just leave AI on autopilot, where's the sort of human connection there? And more importantly, all of the posts will start sounding the same because that's how AI works. It learns on what's out there, what's written, and that's what is the output. So AI works only on what input you give it. So if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. I think the way to think about AI in writing is, like you said, at least that what I do is I look at it as a writing partner, not only to bounce ideas off, but write in the initial draft. And the initial draft can be messy. It can be just, me switching the mic on, dictating and rambling on so that at least I have all my thoughts on paper and then help, use AI to actually kind of help write that, I guess. So I think, so in that way, your initial thoughts, your personality, your ideas are still yours. You're just using AI to polish it more or less. So I think that at least is a good approach wherein you use AI as your writing partner rather than your ghostwriter who will just sort of do everything for you.
Right, makes sense. And you said you also studied psychology. So tell me, what's the difference between a good product and a bad product, and how to make users hook to a product? What do you think is the difference?
I think there's no magic silver bullets. So one is it's all about how you kind of apply existing on what you learned and frameworks, and then based on the data to see, okay, how are folks using it, and then how do you fine tune that based on what the data tells you. You use that as feedback and then build a product, right? Like what kind of helps with psychology is, at least in terms of how do you start thinking about the product when you want to launch based on real world behavior and what their research and studies have shown in the past. And it can work based on different scenarios. I think one good example I learned was if you go to a McDonald's or KFC or any eatery, and you start noticing these things when you actively start looking out for it. So next time when you go to a restaurant or a cafe, especially fast food ones, look at the color.
Okay.
A lot of it are very bright red colors. So if you take out KFC, Five Guys, McDonald's, so McDonald's is the bright yellow. KFC is sort of darker red. I think Five Guys is more of a brighter red. And in psychology, they've done studies wherein they've seen, these colors actually help you in terms of your hunger. You're more likely to eat because of the bright colors. But more importantly, the way fast food works is your table turnover rate, right? So they don't want anyone to just stick around. So they want you to eat what you want and then leave so that someone else can come and take the table. Versus fine dining restaurant, if you go, the mood is more somber, right? There's, even the music that helps. Like if you go into your fast food restaurants, more often than not, it's like bright. The lighting is bright. The music is, fast pop music. Versus a fine dine restaurant, it's more classical, it's more somber music, the lights and the ambience is more sobered down. Have that, and how do you apply it to product is see who your customer is, right? And work backwards from your customer and your customer problem. So if going again back to the psychology of colors and lighting in how fast food and restaurants do it, they work backwards from the customer and what they want out of it. So like I said, fast food, they want them to really be hungry, energetic, but also they don't want them to stay that long. So that's another thing. Like in fast food, they don't have the most comfortable furniture, right? It's always wooden. There's no handles on the furniture. The seating is a bit haphazard. So you have wooden seating versus a fine dine restaurant. There's tablecloths, padded furniture with handles. So it makes you sit down, relax more. When you're relaxed, you tend to spend more time. So that's just it. Like, look at what the customer wants, understand, put yourself in the shoes of the customer, and then work backwards from the customer so that you have not only customer empathy, but because of having customer empathy, you're able to understand what the pain points or the problems of the customer is, or what they actually want, and then build your products backwards from that.
Right. Makes sense. I didn't know about the fine dining versus fast food restaurant. I mean, I think ambience wise and everything, I know the difference, but I didn't know the science behind it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Right. So you have spent your first chunk of your career formerly in marketing and comms, and you have switched to more product management roles later on. So did the switch happen smoothly? Was the transition smooth? How did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, when I started out, product management was still relatively new. So unlike any other profession, there's no linear path, right? What I mean by that is, hey, if you want to become a software engineer, it's pretty simple. You go study computer science and then you can specialize in whatever you want, but then you have a degree that you can fall back on. Same like being a doctor, you study medicine and then, okay, if you want to become a neurosurgeon, you specialize in that and you go towards that field. With product management, there's no such, I think even now, there's no school that you go to. I mean, there's a bunch of online courses or, online degrees, but there's no official sort of a certification that you can get, and where employers also will look at that and be like, okay, just because this person has the certification to their name, I can see them as a credible product manager. So that's how I came into product management. Was like you said, I was working in marketing. I was at AOL working marketing, then joined Amazon as a marketing manager. And because as a marketing manager for a product, I used to work a lot with product managers. And a lot of time I used to get frustrated because I would want to run a marketing campaign and I would want to do something, else with the product, but I couldn't do it because I need to get into the backlog of a product manager, have them prioritize it and then release it and then work on it. So I was very intrigued. Then, I started speaking to more product managers and started doing a bit of, outside of my core responsibility, started picking up more product work and then eventually became a product manager. So that's how I got into product management. I sort of fell into it. It's not something I sort of, pursued. It's not like something, you know, like how kids, when you ask them what do you be when they grow up, I don't think anyone says, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a product manager, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned about online certifications about product management, right? Of course, there is no formal education to be a product manager, but do you think the certifications will help?
I don't think so. At least, I haven't seen anyone who got a job just because they had a certification. And I can see the reason why, because real world product management is very messy. There's no set rules, a product manager from one company to another, even in bigger organizations from one department to another. The role is very fluid. It doesn't tell you exactly, what your roles and responsibilities are. So I think that's why, and I think the at least what I see with courses and certification is they always give you the part of the happy part, right?
Right.
Saying how do you build a product is, you do research, talk to your customers, based on those customers, formulate what your backlog is going to be, why you're going to build it, work with marketing for GTM, make sure your measurements are in place and launch it. But within each of them, there's so much, I would say, resistance in how to do it, which I think a lot of these courses don't get into. One clear example, even in the first steps, talk to your customers. How do you get access to your customers, right? How do you do outreach when, especially in smaller companies, you don't have a big, UX research team to help you interview customers, what questions you ask of the customers, how do you even schedule customers to get this, right? Because now, and this is what I feel the courses won't tell you now when you go and, okay, even if you cross that part, when you interview customers, 9 out of 10 times, they'll tell you what's wrong with the product or what they want with the product. And 9 out of 10 times, you can't do half of them. Because that's not the direction that your product is headed, or there's a lot of factors in play where, either connecting it to different platforms where it's not mature yet, that you can't possibly, do that, mainly from a technical perspective. So I think these are all the small things, and more importantly, the soft skills that it requires to be a product manager.
Right.
One of the key things I feel, at least for a product manager, is stakeholder management, right? I think stakeholder management is a big word, but at the end of the day, it's like essentially how do you talk to people, right? Because the way you talk to someone who is more senior is a very different language you talk to a designer or even an engineer. So, and all of that, you want to communicate the same things, whether it's progress on your product or based on the feedback, what you need to build. And because you need to build that, how do you get, buy-in alignment from senior management saying, these are the proof points, these are why I need to build what I need to build. So there's a lot of nuances there in terms of how do you communicate, and more importantly, even how do you communicate with different personalities, because everyone is different. So kind of how do you build that rapport with people, right? Because more often than not, if the people that you work with, if you have a rapport, aka, they have a good relationship and they like you, things go much smoothly than, if you're not a very likable person. So how do you do that? I think that there's no course, at least in product management I've seen, that teaches you things like this.
Yeah, I don't think there is course anywhere to teach
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, and
In
unfortunately,
any
it's a
field.
bit of a chicken and egg, right? Then it falls to like, okay, if there's no course, a lot of this is based on experience. So, but then if I want to get into product management, I don't have experience. How do you get into this? Yeah.
Right. Makes sense. What makes a good product manager in 2026, especially? I'm sure you must have interviewed a lot of junior PMs or engineers for your teams. So, in 2026, what is that one skill or set of skills that are very important for someone to be a good product manager?
I think in terms of the fundamentals, even with the age of AI, the core fundamentals of being a product manager still remain same, at least according to me, right? Like what I would look out for is, are they able to empathize with the customer? Because I think that's a key skill. If you're not able to empathize with the customer, you're not able to put yourself in the customer's shoes. Now, if you're not able to put yourself in the customer's shoes, you're not able to work backwards from the customer problem, right? So I think that's probably like the key skill in terms of, are you able to put yourself in the customer's shoes? And then how do you put yourself in the customer's shoes will differ from person to person, right? Like, for example, for me, how I put myself is just looking at the data and looking at, how customers are behaving on the site, and, interviewing customers, both talking mostly to customers, both your happy part customers and your frustrated customers who don't really want to use your product. So then you get a full spectrum of your customer base and able to say, okay, these are the major pain points. These are the happy parts. So then you're able to bridge that gap and saying, okay, if this is the happy customer and these are the unhappy customers, how do we make sure that, what are the things we need to do to make customers who are unhappy bridge over to the happy part? Like, what are they doing differently from the customers who are happy? Is there something that they don't get? Are we designing for the wrong customer base? So because of all of this, it helps you ask the right questions. And when you start asking the right questions, you kind of eventually come into, the correct answers. So I think it all starts with empathy, customer empathy, working backwards from the customers, helps you formulate questions or hypothesis that you can test. And then through those hypotheses and tests, you're able to at least better your product every day.
Right. Makes sense. I think I was reading or going through your LinkedIn, and you mentioned something called products prove themselves in data before they scale. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So I think one of the mistakes I see some folks do is they feature load everything into the product and then launch, right? One of the analogies that I've been taught is, been given advice on, is saying it's like you plan for a big party, you have everything, you order every food possible to fit everyone, you have balloons, you have everything else, and then realize no one was interested in your party. Like no one comes. So I would say always, start small. And that's why having that MVP is very important, right? And having an MVP not only means start small, but it's there in the name. What is your minimum viable product to prove that there's product market fit, right? How do you prove product market fit is launch early, launch fast. Because once it's out there and used by real customers, that's when the real data starts coming in. It's no longer assumptions. It's no longer things you thought about in the head. Because once a customer starts using your product, there's a lot of things in unlocks. One is not only you can start seeing how the customers behave, where they get frustrated, so that it gets you fine-tuning your product. But also then you start getting customers who you can talk to. You can start interviewing and saying, okay, what do they like? What do they don't like? So that you can start building on top of that versus, you build a bunch of features that no one will ever use. And then when I say prove themselves in data before they scale, the other mistake that I've seen is a lot of them just launch and forget about it, or launch and measure themselves by, we launch and before, there was, 100 clicks of 5% conversion. Now we launch, there's 10% conversion. But then how can you prove that? So that's what I mean by prove themselves in data before they scale. I think a lot of them don't do a control test, because that's the only way, at least that I know how, to actually prove that this feature that you launched is related to, the product, is, move the needle on the metrics. And you're able to prove that because it's pure controlled tests, right? And where all this came from is in science. I mean, that's how they concretely prove all of this. So yeah, more people if not, they should start using it. I think by principle, a lot of folks agree. But I think when it comes down to it, because they want to launch fast and because they sometimes afraid of the results, they just launch and be like, anyway, we were going to launch it. So, why do we need to test, right? Because even if something that is a 100% winner, a control experiment will give you a lot of signals into why it's successful. Because then that will give you information on what to do next, which is, I would say, one of the biggest unlocks with the experimentation. Even though you know that, whatever happens, we're gonna launch it. It not only tells you, what works and then be able to prove that, but also it tells you by how much, right?
Right.
Did it 10x your product? Did it 1x your product? Or did even just do a 0.5%? That's fine. But it has concrete proof in numbers that's non-debatable. And it shows your thinking as a product manager. It's not fluke. You set out with a clear hypothesis. Based on that hypothesis, you designed a clear experiment and you measured your results. And, you learn from those results. And then from those results, again, going back to the drawing board, okay, based on these results, what is the next hypothesis that I'm able to form to better my product?
So I do have a couple of follow-ups on experimentation, right? One, if you are a startup, how important is A/B testing? So for our viewers who do not know about A/B testing or experimentation, give a few lines about A/B testing and define A/B testing. And also in big companies, there are a lot of data scientists who run a lot of experiments or product managers who run a lot of experiments. How do we know that the results are polluted by an other experiment? For example, you made a change and you have got results, you have a fair sample size and you run an experiment. How do you know that the other experiment or the other feature or color change or anything has not impacted your results?
Yeah. Sorry, there's a lot of questions in that. Can we take them one by one? Then I'll be able to. Yeah.
Right. So what is A/B testing or experimentation? Why is it important for any product?
Yeah. In simple terms, A/B testing is essentially trying to isolate your experience and then measuring the results of the two. So in simple terms, okay, for example, if you want to release a new medicine, right? That's where A/B testing, I think, eventually came from. Yeah, started. You want to release a new medicine, you have 100 people in the experiment, and then in the control test, without, telling folks, you give a sugar tablet as control, right? And then in treatment A, you actually give the real medicine for flu or headache or whatever. So in this, in your sample size, you have people who have reported chronic headaches. In the control, you gave them sugar tablets, and in treatment A, you actually gave them the actual tablet. And then you measure, okay, between control, how many have reported that, that they have actually the headache is gone or it's just a placebo effect versus treatment A who have taken it, who might have said, it's gone or not gone. And then you measure it through the p-value, right? So, which is your statistical significance, whether, it's significant enough so that it's not a pure count of, oh, 5 people said yes, 1 people said no. There's no way to say, okay, so what is statistical significance? And you look at statistical significance that are more than 95% of p-value. That's p is under 0.05, if I'm not wrong. What that means is, if you run this test hundreds of times, 95% of the time it will be right, so that it gives you the confidence. Is it 100% accurate? No. Why do we use it? Because it at least gives us directional confidence that, 95% of the time this is going to be right. And that's the data that we go for. A lot of the times also you don't want, you want data to tell you that you're trending in the right direction and you're not, launching things that, that are harmful in the long run. So, that's the first question on, I guess,
Right.
what is generally A/B testing. Yeah.
Right.
And what's your next one?
How do we make sure that the results are not polluted by other experiments or other feature changes, and like exactly how do we know that our feature change has caused that change in the results or has that significance impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think this is also where a lot of folks trip up when they start experimenting, right? And you can run multiple experiments concurrently. And so how do you make sure they don't pollute each other is you need to have a strong hypothesis, and the hypothesis must also mirror in terms of what are your success metrics or criteria. For example, if your hypothesis is, I don't know, we want to add in, for example, I can give, I'm thinking, what's a good hypothesis? The trap with color changes, everyone will just put random colors. They're like, we feel we want to put red because of whatever reason, right? And then if red doesn't work, they'll put yellow and they'll keep continuing. I think the strong hypothesis must be linked to the outcome that you want. So, for example, if in, say, a general funnel that a user goes through, and your hypothesis is, you want to improve the value added services, right? I mean, that's not a hypothesis, that's the business outcome. You want to improve the value added services. So your hypothesis would be, hey, when booking airlines, we want to add value added services that are, beneficial to the user. And when we add this, that's not what's a word, distracting to the user. It'll improve our overall revenue, right? So that's your hypothesis. Now, how do you design the experiment, right? So then you, okay, my control is pretty straightforward, wherein I won't have value-added services through the booking journey. When a user books, the value-added services might come in an email or something that's later. Now here's where then you test my hypothesis, saying, okay, your hypothesis is you want to add in the value-added services where it makes sense for the user and not distracting, right? So obviously you're not going to add in the first page when they actually, going high with the booking. It's only after they book. But when in the journey is after their book, right? Is it, after their seat selection, after they confirm the final payment, or, before they confirm the final payment, right? So then in this case, you might have two treatments. Treatment A will be, you're saying, before the payment, right? You want to add in extra bits like seat selection, extra baggage, and so on, so that at least what you're testing for treatment A is saying, the user would want to know what's the final amount before they check out. The converse will be in treatment B, wherein you want to see, if that is too distracting, and then you want to make sure you get the core booking first, as in book the airline, and after that confirmation page, you might want to prompt the user and say, okay, you booked your airline now. Do you want to add extra, baggage, food, and so on? So then these are the two so you have the hypothesis, based on that hypothesis, the experiment design, you have two things that you want to test, which is treatment A and treatment B. Now, the third thing is how do you measure success? Your success should be measured on, what's the final outcome and whether that behavior is linked to that final outcome, right? And the other important thing you need to have is do not fail metrics, where I don't see a lot of people having this. And that's what I learned at Amazon, wherein even if your success metrics succeed, if it trips up your do not fail metrics, overall, not in the product, but the entire org or the business down the line, it's going to be harmful. So it's basically saying these are do not harm metrics. Whatever happens, if it doesn't meet your threshold for do not harm, your experiment is a failure. So again, in this example, then what is your metrics you'll kind of look at is, I think one success metric you look at is overall revenue, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to see, okay, is this really moving the needle on the overall revenue because you're adding extra value added services. Two is, in terms of directly linked to the behavior, is are they actually adding value added services, and how many? right?
Right.
I mean, it's directly linked to revenue, but at least it tells you one is from a pure revenue perspective, what is the amount? And secondly, it tells you what are the value added sources that's important to the customer. Right. And then your do not harm metrics might be cancellations, because then you're checking your overall flow, making sure that, hey, just because I added value added sources and by mistake, your design is not intuitive and it might be auto selected or whatnot. And then they're going through, but later on they realize, hey, what is this extra, 40 pounds that's been added? I didn't ask for it. I added by mistake, and they cancel it. So that do not harm metrics make sure you're not getting overall cancellation spiking because of your feature, but also tells you in terms of your user flow, is it intuitive enough that they're adding it because they liked it and not they're adding it because it appeared on the screen and they're just going out. So I think that's how, and conversely, you can have other experiments running as well, right? For example, now within the value added sources space, another PM who's solely looking at value added sources as a portfolio might run, okay, which value added sources do we show first or last? If we personalize the value added sources, will that lead to a better outcome? And these two can run concurrently, because one is they are isolating the sample size when you run the experiment. But more importantly, the metrics are tied into that outcome, because that other experiment will have very different outcomes and success metrics compared to this experiment that we run, where it's throughout the onboarding flow.
Right. Makes sense. So I have worked with, big techs and the smaller startups as well. And I think in smaller startups, the experimentation culture, at least for what I have known and worked, experimentation culture is not that built. Smaller startups are more focused on features, making their product better than, I guess, setting up experiments and everything. So what's the easiest way, or are there any platforms? How should smaller startups approach this?
Yeah, I think so. One is in terms of when you need to experiment, right? I think you need to ask that key question. Because not everything requires an experimentation. For example, if you're updating your privacy or policy page, right? No matter what the outcome, you're going to launch it and it's not going to make a difference. So that obviously doesn't require an experimentation. The other rule is when you need to, rule of thumb in terms of when you need to experiment is, okay, you need to look at the success. So if this experiment is successful, aka your treatment A or treatment B is successful, you need to define what will success look like. That is your success metrics. But more importantly, what happens after that, right? Would you roll it out to users? For example, in the previous example where I mentioned VAS, and if your key metric is to improve value added services, you could game the system and say, I'll put value added services on the first page and everyone will click it, right? And that's your hypothesis, saying value added services are important for whatever reason, but I'll put it on the first page because they'll click it. But then if it's successful, if you're coming to book an airline, would you put value added services first? Like probably not, right? So that's a key question to ask. If it's successful, would you roll it out? And more importantly, would you build more on part of that, right? So again, coming back to the value added services example that I gave is, okay, now the first hypothesis you prove true, that in value added service, assume it's true, that it's useful within the onboarding flow in after they book their tickets. Now after you prove that, you move on and then build up from that and improve, saying, okay, we proved that the flow is right, but now we also need to understand which value added services are more important for the user. So, your value added services might have like 10 different value added services, right? Some of them might not want to order food. So you can again design an experiment based on that, saying, okay, do we put in like core sort of value added services first? For example, extra luggage, more. So those are again your hypothesis that would you design on that. So that's on the first part, is saying, okay, does it need an experimentation? And secondly, then the second question you need to answer is, do we have enough to of a sample size to reach significance, right? And I think that's mostly the issue with startups, saying because you don't have enough customers, you don't have enough people coming on your page. And that's even true for big organizations as well. You might be on, some smaller feature, small page or a new feature where you don't get much traffic. So how do you get the sample size? I think in those cases, I would say I would tend to not have an experiment, but you rather launch and, gather data and learn from the data in terms of, okay, I made this change, but, what did I learn from it? Did my conversions go up? Okay, my conversions went up, but can I pinpoint why it went up, right? In terms of, okay, if the conversions went up, did they click on something that made that conversion go up? Was the CTA more intuitive? So you have like these sort of mini hypotheses that you sort of build out. So at least it's not a random change. But again, the important thing is making sure you have the measurement set up so that you can gather data from that and learn, even if you're not, doing an experiment on it.
Right. Makes sense. All right. Let's talk about London Startup Map. So, what is the idea behind it, and why do you think London needs it?
Yeah. So I'll tell you how London Startup Map came to being. So someone sent me an invite for a random startup event. I said, okay, let me go check it out and see how it is. And I went to it and I loved it because I was like so intrigued in terms of what London startups were building here. And then I started going to more events. I started talking to more people, and the energy and in the room, plus talking to more people, how they're building. It was amazing, right? So I was like really intrigued. I was like, man, what am I doing? I want to be part of this scene. So I was like, okay, but how do I be part of this scene? Because the London startup community is very close knit. It's like everyone knows everyone, and I kind of felt like the outsider. And then it was more like, okay, I wanted to then see how can I be part of a startup that's, really pushing itself and going to be building, the next big thing. But as I spoke to more people, they saw my corporate background history and they thought I won't fit in. So I was like, well, I don't know if that's true, but, how do I then fit in? Yes, I worked in corporates, but I do have experience I feel I can, put into startups. So I think one of the advice was just like, build something, put it out there, let people know about it. So yeah, one day I came home, I thought about, okay, what should I build? And then I just came home from this event, and then I was like, I had this conversation that's saying, London is rivaling SF in terms of startups, not only in terms of the funding that they receive, but the valuation of startups. I think that's how they measure themselves. I think SF is first, and now London is second. So I like, how do I show the density of startups and stuff? I like, okay, is there a map of all the startups, a directory of startups? There wasn't any concrete directory of startups. It was all scattered through various other smaller directories. So I said, okay, can I show them on a map to show the density? But then I'm thinking, what's the value in that? Because someone could just create a, Google Places list and just do that. Then the problem I had was, whenever I go to this event, I don't quite remember who the startup was sometimes. But also if I remember the startup, it's not easy to follow the events on Duma because, for example, if I'm interested in, say, 11 Labs and I wanted to follow them, most often than not, they're not hosting it at their site. They might, partner with a Gamma or a Granola and have a fireside chat at WeWork. So there's no easy way on Duma to filter out and find that. So that's how London Startup Map was born. It not only shows the startups in a map, you can click on it, It'll show you the founders, the address, you can visit the site, but also it shows you the associated events so that then you can essentially, if you follow a startup, you can start attending events that they would be part of. So that's how it was born.
Are you scraping data from internet to kind of get all the addresses and funding details and founders data, etc.? And if so, how are you making sure it is accurate?
Yeah, good question. So, how the London startup map, how I designed it to initially run was I needed an existing base of data, right? Like I said, there's no single directory that lists every startup. It's all scattered. The closest directory that I could find was YC. And then there's other sources like Scaling Europe, which again is sort of the single source of truth since they report on all funding and startups. So I started with that and I essentially, scrape the data, put it on the map. On the map, I use Google API, Maps API to kind of pinpoint which building that they would be in because it's already there on Google, and then cross-reference that to the startup. So that's how I got it on the map. Everything else is all public data. So I didn't want to get into trouble for scraping any private data. So it's all public data. So with that list, initially I got around 200 startups, and then I posted on LinkedIn and X. A lot of people liked it. So, not only a lot of people started adding their own startups and sharing it, but also folks started offering their databases that they had collected over the years. So London Maxing, shared the database. UK Startup Hub put my map on their website and shared their database as well. So it's all become community led, and I think that's the right way to go because that's the only way we can be as accurate as possible, especially with startups. Like I said, there's no single source of truth for all of this. Example, a startup may move buildings over time, right? From the seed stage to when they grow into Series A or Series B, they might move out of WeWork into their own building. So, and I do get some of these corrections as well from folks. So like I said, it's all community led, people adding the startups, people who have offered their databases to grow it. And so, yeah, I was quite shocked and humbled by that response. And I'm glad that it resonated with a lot of people, and quite a lot of people liked it actually. So, yeah.
So recently I have been looking at lot of events and clubs, whether if I can go in as a speaker for some of the events, because I'm also building something in public for my content. So one of the things that I'm not as a startup, but I have taken a 30-day challenge where I have given like 100,000 US dollars in paper money for ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and benchmarked it against Nasdaq's performance for June. I've given universe of big techs to trade against these stocks and research in their own way, etc., etc. So just for story building and how it works without any strategy, if someone does not know about trading, can we make money with AI? That's the whole question that I am kind of trying to solve, and I kind of post videos on daily basis on what the performance is and what the decisions that each AI portfolios has taken for that day, what has it decided to add or cut or trim down, etc., and what is the reasoning behind it. So I have been trying to kind of go in as a speaker for some of these events, and I've gotten in few of these events, but then I think it's been really tough for me to find what startups or what clubs really are looking for speakers and for their events, etc. Maybe London Startup Map can also add that, where maybe startups or startups that are organizing events need some kind of speakers, or have this speaker community where we can make a profile as a speaker in London Startup Map, and maybe startups can pick that up and have a conversation from there. So something to think about. Maybe I'm not sure if that's a good suggestion, but maybe
no, that's a good suggestion, and that's lot of the feedback I've been getting, right? From a lot of folks have want to improve on this. So, some of the feedback that they've been sharing is, can we have job boards for the startups that are hiring? Can we have an account feature, because I want to favorite some of the startups and I want to be being sent an email if they're hosting an event next week. So all of this can be done when you start having an account and so on. And also the community angle, this not only they say, can they have the same thing not only for London, but can you have it for Manchester, for Edinburgh, for Barcelona, etc.
Right.
I had one for India as well, for Bangalore.
Right.
So I have to see how to do all of that. But also, can we have VCs as overlay? Can we have co-working spaces, hacker houses? And the startups also have reached out saying, since you know all these events, do you know how we can collaborate with other startups for these events? So all of these I'm exploring, and I think your angle also is pretty valid that, outside of general startups, there are a lot of community-led events.
Yeah.
So, how do we surface those, which you have to sort of then think about, go back to the drawing board. Because like I said, this was, I didn't do this to start a business, build this into something big. It was just a side project to see, one, to prove to myself that I could build. But lucky it resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people liked it. So now I'm saying, okay, how can I keep expanding on this and see what happens, and more and more people can find it useful.
Right, makes sense. One thing that stood out for me was you built almost most of your product using Claude Code. So what surprised you? How did you do that? And what did broke in real time, especially while using Claude Code?
Yeah. So Claude Code, I learned, I self-taught myself Claude Code, but shout out to Carl Bellotti. So anyone who wants to learn Claude Code, Codex, he has a bunch of courses. I think the difference in his courses is it's free. There's a lot of people on YouTube who'll teach you like 5% of it and then, ask you to pay for the course. I don't think you need a paid course to really learn Claude Code. It's more about once you know the basics, you just go in, and a lot of it is just natural language that you speak to it, right? If anyone wants to learn Claude Code, search for Carl Bellotti courses, because the difference is they actually teach you Claude Code in Claude Code. So you learn by doing, and that's how I learned it. How I built it was, I think Claude Code or Codex is very powerful. You have to, the mental model or the mindset you have to go in with, treat them as they're the smartest engineers, designers, writers you have at your disposal, but they have no context about what you do. They have no idea. So you have to feed it context. You have to direct it. That's how I built it. I feed it context on how roughly I wanted it to design, what I wanted it to be. And then essentially Claude Code was my lead engineer to help me build it. All the design decisions, what needs to flow, how it needs to look, all of that was me then just feeding it into it.
Right. So what's one learning or what broke in production? And
one learning
do you
is
recommend vibe coding?
Yeah, definitely recommend vibe coding. I think it's great. It democratizes building, right? Because earlier, if I had to build something like this, I could never. I would need an engineer, and I assume it would at least take a week of engineer's time to build something like this, right? So
at least a week.
Yeah. I'm thinking if they're a really good engineer, maybe 2-3 days. Good. I don't know, right? And
I think more than a week, but
yeah. And then what lessons I learned? At least for me, Claude Code is a really good engineer, but a very lazy engineer, right? What I mean by that is most of the time it would not only forget things sometimes, but it would also not do the things I want. For example, if I already have it connected to Vercel, I'll say, hey, can you get the metrics from Vercel? It'll say, no, I don't have the CLI access. And I'm like, I already gave you CLI authenticated. And I'm like, can you double check? Or you say, can you double check? Then do research. Oh, you're absolutely right. Already had this for some reason, blah, blah, blah. So I think like that's the main thing. I found it to be sometimes lazy. It won't do some of the more simpler, obvious tasks. It'll ask you to do it instead. But I always try to push it and say, okay, can you do it for me? And think, because I want to, at least for me, I want to live inside that terminal and see how, push the limits of what all Claude Code can do inside the terminal versus me trying to go into a web the old way of going into a website, pulling in the metrics, copy pasting, and feeding it to Claude Code. So I just have Claude Code pull in everything. The last thing is what broke, right? What broke? I think one of the key things is when because my site is sort of image heavy, and it taught me a lot about image optimization and blobs. I had no idea what. Well, I knew what image optimization was. I didn't know what the hell blobs were, right? And the way I learned along is, I prompted Claude saying, "Hey, you're my lead engineer, but treat me as a product manager. Don't just tell me stuff like you would do for an engineer because I won't understand. Tell it to me in simple terms as a product manager so that I can make the decision, but also teach me on what you're doing," right? So, I had no idea what Bash was Git was, stuff like that. So all of this, at least it helps me learn along the way when I do it. So yeah.
Right. Makes sense. So, how important is building something in public? I know London Startup Map is more kind of community driven, or you need feedback from the community itself. But as a general founder in 2026, do you think building in public is important, or everyone should pursue it?
I don't know. I think important is relative, but I think depending on a product, just put yourself out there. Like, for example, with London Startup Map, I guess I could have done a lot more, but I just built it in like a weekend and saw, okay, this was sort of good enough. And then once I started getting more feedback, now I started tweaking and changing some of the things, but started optimizing it a bit more, right? Could I have done it earlier? Probably, but I would have known that I needed to do this, needed to go a certain path. So I think it goes back to my earlier thing in terms of it's less about building in public. I think it's more if you're a founder to get your product out there as fast as possible, right? In a form that you think it's usable. And you can even get it in closed beta and whatnot, right? Because you can get a waiting list. So at least you have a ready list of customers to go out with. Because being in stealth doesn't give you anything, right? You're just going to remain in stealth. So at some point or other, you have to show your work, rather show it sooner than later.
Right. Makes sense. So what's next for London Startup Map? What's something interesting that you're building, and where can people follow you?
Sure. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and X. I'll post more updates about it. Please, if you're a startup, anyone startups that are in London, please have them visit the site, and submit the startup. Like I said, my vision for London Startup Map is to be the single source of truth, the single directory for all startups, because I think all startups can use a visibility and distribution, and this is a way for them. And not only that, it helps me, but it helps grow the London startup community and ecosystem together. So that's my vision on this. On what's next, I don't know. I'm still thinking. I told you all before a bunch of feature requests that I got. So right now, again, I'm putting my PM thinking hat on to see, okay, in terms of prioritization, which one should I go with first, and see how scalable some of the things are. What should I do with them? So that's what next. Like I said, I wanted to continue to be community led. It's absolutely. I'm not doing this to make money or anything. It's all free to submit your startup. So yeah, I want it to be democratic. To submit your startup, anyone can find you. Community led. If you're an existing startup, make sure you can keep it updated. Pull in your events. If it's not pulling in, let me know. If it's a new startup, please go ahead and submit it. So yeah.
So before we wrap this up, we'll end with a small rapid fire. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, let's go.
The one skill every PM needs in 2026.
How to use a terminal IDE in with Claude Code or Codex.
Ship fast and messy or slow and clean.
Fast and messy, learn by the data.
The one AI tool you couldn't do your job without.
I think it's obvious, it's Claude Code.
Okay. Will AI replace product managers? Yes or no?
No, I think, you still need PMs for judgment. Otherwise, you're just shipping more things that could be wrong.
Okay. With the help of AI, will non-engineers ship more products than engineers in coming years?
What? Yeah, I think they will, but will it be useful is the question mark.
Okay. Vibe coding a product, good or bad?
It's definitely good. I mean, I'm a living example of that.
Claude, ChatGPT or Gemini? Which one do you use the most?
Claude.
London startup map in 3 words.
A map, startups, events.
Okay. One book every PM should read.
Yeah, this is a hot take. It's not a exact PM book, but I love this book. It's the design of everyday things.
Okay.
And I think every PM, not even PM, everyone should read it because then it's fascinating why some things are designed the way they are. And it's not because it looks good, but it's more practical to use. So we could learn a lot from that.
All right. The biggest lie in product management?
You're the mini CEO.
Okay. Best career advice you ever got?
Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness.
Okay. Okay. Lastly, finish this sentence. In 2026, the people who will win the AI era will do?
Will use AI to propel themselves forward rather than treating AI like a checkbox.
Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much, Fu, for joining. I have learned a lot from this conversation, and I hope our community has also learned a lot. And everyone who is watching this, if you have a startup, please register yourself on London Startup Map. It will help the community and it will put your startup in the map as well. So, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Soil. And yeah, thank you so much.